Good afternoon. It's Monday, the 14th of November 2016, just after 1 o'clock, and welcome to UK Column News. I'm your host, Brian Gerrish. With me in the studio, Mike Robinson. And delighted to say we will be joined by live video Skype link by Mark Anderson from American Free Press. And we're going to have some coverage of exciting events in America. Before we get on to that, though, just a brief comment on the weather. It's generally cold, chilly, grey, depending where you are, but I'm told that Malvern is enjoying a little bit of sunshine at the moment. So if you need some extra vitamin D, Malvern is the place to be.
Where are we starting?
Well, we better start with the BBC, because the BBC has been carrying on Hillary Clinton's election campaign. I'm not sure whether the £3.65 billion organisation realises that the American election is over, but they're campaigning for her. Well, not entirely, Mike. So here we are. Clinton blames defeat on FBI director. And that's, of course, because that nasty man, James Comey, actually mentioned her crimes of breaches of American security systems. The BBC doesn't want to talk about that. It's simply, though, saying that Mr. Comey is clearly not a very nice man. And here she is in black for mourning. And the little caption under this nice little video clip is Donald Trump supporters saw Clinton's experience and qualifications as huge negatives. And we just wonder whether part of those qualifications were her crimes. But as I say, BBC simply doesn't want to talk about facts.
No, indeed. Now, of course, over the last couple over the weekend, there have been continuing protests in the United States. And, well, we look at this because, of course, what we're seeing perhaps is a colour revolution, a purple revolution, in fact. Well, Hillary kicked it off with her purple flashes on her clothes at her concession speech. And of course, Bill was wearing his purple tie. I mean, the pressure just continues. John Oliver wearing his purple shirt. How did we get here, with expletives in between? And then, of course, any excuse in the mainstream media at the moment to have any kind of purple item at all. Well, who's this? Ms. Powers wearing some purple. Even the BBC's getting in on it. BBC Newsnight going all purple. They've been purple for a year or so, I think, but certainly promoting the purple commentators. But who is behind all this trouble in the States? Well, it's the usual suspects, isn't it? It's a Vaz, our last chance to stop Trump. It's Move On. Well, Move On. George Soros, isn't it? A Vaz, George Soros. What else have we got? We've got a teacher suspended, according to RT, in the United States because he compared Trump to Hitler. Well, this article isn't that interesting in its own right until you look at the bottom at who owns the copyright of the photograph of the teacher, and it's change.org, another Soros outlet. And then, of course, we have Purpose Inc. Not who we are, they say. It's time to stand with those who have been targeted, scapegoated, and scammed by Donald Trump. It's time to think not of political parties, but of who we are as Americans. It's time to say Donald Trump is not who we are, and you get the opportunity to continue to Purpose. Well, who is Purpose? Well, this is their website, and they've got this wonderful little video. We've showed this before. Purpose moves people to remake the world, Brian. They will operate right across the world. And they move people, millions of people they move. You might say that means that they move them emotionally, or perhaps they're moving them literally. I suspect it's the latter. They're moving them literally right around the world. And this is the imagery that they like to show on their website. Children holding guns, but they're a mass movement. Who's behind them? Well, Avaz and MoveOn.org are behind this organization.
And big funding money, of course.
Big funding money, right? This organization is behind all the White Helmets videos. This organization linked to Site Intelligence, which is behind all the ISIS videos. So we see the same type of operation going on in other countries as is going on in the United States at the moment. And of course, anywhere where there's the opportunity for revolution, well, the Muslim Brotherhood can't be too far away. So of course, Trump standing on immigration as one of his talking points during the campaign. So the Muslim Brotherhood are getting stuck in. All these organizations backed by one man, this man, George Soros. And well, let's just see if I can find it here. He had quite a bit to say about what was going to happen in the United States back in 2012. He was speaking to Newsweek in 2012. He said, "I'm not here to cheer you up. The situation is about as serious and difficult as I've experienced in my career. We're facing an extremely difficult time, comparable in many ways." He's talking about the financial crisis, but what he was basically going on to say was that the United States was going to be facing civil unrest, massive civil unrest, and this was his prediction for the next few years. And Gilad Atzmon today has something to say on George Soros, the oligarch who owns the left. And this is a very interesting article. Do have a read at it. We must not forget, of course, if we're wondering why this is going on, what Brzezinski said, mankind, this is 2010, mankind is now politically awakened and stirring. A fractured elite makes it much more difficult context for major power, including currently the leading world power in the United States. So I believe what we're seeing is a color revolution, or the attempt to start a color revolution
in
America.
Yeah.
Keep people divided, keep people at each other's throats. It's the same type of psychological attack that people in Britain have seen over Brexit. We've got to be at each other's throats on one or other side of a very divided argument. It's not multiple divisions, it's only two. And that's what's being created here. Mark, have you got any thoughts on this?
Certainly. There's a lot that could be said here. You covered a lot of ground, and very well, Mike. First of all, the American left is a very good candidate to raise this divisiveness that you're talking about. They're making statements like a vote for Trump is a hate crime. There's actually signs that have been raised, placards that have been carried, saying that anyone who even voted for Trump has committed a hate crime in doing so. Now, if that's not divisive rhetoric, I don't know what is. Many people, of course, have hung their hopes on Trump. They see a lot of promise in him. And then the left is taking such a divergent path, not accepting defeat, having tried to put, in conjunction with the media and conjunction with all this Soros money, having tried to put a basically criminal Hillary Clinton in the office. All the ingredients for this purple revolution have been spot on. The huge gap between the Trump and Clinton supporters, the extreme background of Hillary Clinton trying to put her in the White House, and then such extreme statements to vote for the other person, Trump, being a hate crime. And this all suggests, of course, that at least the lead protesters are probably paid agitators out of the Soros funds. This is, of course, something that's not new, but a lot of people don't realize or don't think about it all the way through, that you have a lot of paid agitators. Where do people get all the time in the world to go torching cars and throwing bricks through windows? Some of us have jobs and families and bills to pay, and these people just seem to have all this leisure time to do these revolutionary acts. So, the action is in the reaction. They're going to try and stir the pot and try and create this kind of tinderbox, but hopefully cooler heads will prevail, even though part of what feeds all this is the fact that Americans are only given Diet Coke and Coca-Cola as their choices for president. We don't have the multi-party system. We don't have proportional representation like in European governments. So right out of the starting gate, we have such a narrow range of choices to begin with. And then when you look at the specific ingredients involved here, it really could create the perfect storm if we're not careful.
Some people in the chat box suggesting that it's sour grapes, that it's not. What's going on is people reacting to a result they didn't like. But actually, what we're saying here is it's more than that. If Brzezinski, if we just put the Brzezinski quote back on screen again, if several years ago the likes of Brzezinski was recognizing that people in the West are waking up to the activities of the political elite, if he's saying that mankind is now politically awakened and stirring, then that elite is concerned about mankind unifying and taking them down a peg or two. The best way to deal with that situation, Mark, is it not, is to keep people at each other's throats and to use divisive subjects to do that.
Yes, the recent populism conference that I reported on here that the Chicago Council on Global Affairs held was hard evidence that the elite and their cohorts are concerned about a real unification of mankind behind traditional principles, behind long held views of human freedom and what that actually means, what grassroots economic autonomy means. And so we're not just speculating here. They're breaking bread, the elite. They're having large meetings and symposiums talking about the rise of nationalism, populism. It doesn't mean that every nationalism, populist figure is perfect. It doesn't mean that it's totally unified, but it would put the elite down a peg or two, as you say, Mike. And their meetings are evidence that they're very concerned about this.
Okay, well, let's just let Boris Johnson have the last word on this, because today he said we should not prejudge Donald Trump. His election should be regarded as an opportunity. Now, if you view those words from the point of view of someone who is an elitist, they may have a slightly different connotation than what we might otherwise consider. I think that makes it pretty clear.
Yeah. Mark, can we ask you, there's been a little bit of talk about the types of people that Trump is indicating you might bring around him as a team. Are you able to give us any information on names that you've heard or any opinion on what sort of people he's looking at?
You know, it's kind of a moving target right now on the 14th of November here on a Monday. And one of the more unsettling possible choices, Indiana Governor Mike Pence, who became the vice president nominee here, the vice president elect, along with Donald Trump as the Republican president elect. Pence and Trump are talking about having Rudy Giuliani, America's mayor, he says, because he just happened to be New York City mayor when 9/11 happened, having Giuliani named as Attorney General. That one's a little unsettling. Giuliani has a checkered past, to say the least, and we won't go into that today, I don't believe. That's one of them. There are others. It's kind of up in the air right now. There's going to be a lot more known about that probably come Wednesday, Thursday, or the end of this week. But one of the things is that he is looking at some state officials out of Kansas and Ohio, and not always picking from the ranks of the elite. You're not seeing a lot of Council on Foreign Relations people, at least not yet, as you have with past Obama and Bush administrations. The Council on Foreign Relations, of course, being the New York-based outlet of your Chatham House. They're associated there. So time will tell here. It's a mixed bag, but it doesn't look as elitist as the past two presidents, to say the least, just at this point in time.
Now, Mark, you have written over the weekend, following Trump's triumphant win, will Obama hurry up and pass TPP? What is the status of the TPP trade deal in the United States at the moment? Because this seems to be the one thing that Theresa May is particularly concerned about. Theresa May has said that Britain is going to be global, that Britain is going to drive the new swathe of trade deals, since TPP and TTIP seem to be dead in the water. But what can Obama do at this stage? And is there any possibility that this will actually pass?
There is a possibility. The dynamic, of course, is that now we're in the infamous lame duck period. Americans sometimes forget that now that they have their president-elect, the old government is in power for the rest of this calendar year, up until Trump is sworn in on January 20th, when the next Congress is seated. This is now when congressmen who, especially those who were not reelected on November 8th, are still passing laws, even though they've been voted out. Now they feel bulletproof, and now they would have less qualms about voting on the TPP and trying to pass it. This is the time when all the divisiveness that the Soros money and others are kicking up, and all the dust they're stirring up, this is when they do their sleight of hand and try and get us all obsessed about Trump and Hillary and try and sneak past this TPP. However, Obama's support of Hillary was so blatant and off the edge that a lot of people have lost a lot of credibility in Obama. They really think he's slipped down a notch or two. So even for Obama, it'll become a little more, how would you say, a little rockier, a little more uncomfortable to lift that TPP specter and try and pass that thing. But I believe that the Theresa Mays of the world and others assume that Donald Trump will flush the TPP down the proverbial toilet. I'm not sure that's totally true. That's what Trump said on the campaign trail. So their only option really is to try and pass this massive 12-nation trade treaty sometime between now and the end of this calendar year. I think they'll think that it's too risky once Trump is in there. So all eyes are on the TPP. As we reported earlier on your show a few weeks back, maybe a month or two, as I was on here, they passed the basic document that lays the groundwork to pass the final TPP enactment bill. The groundwork was already laid to pass that bill. So now it's just a basically watch daily kind of thing, monitoring this thing on a daily basis. It's their only option. Once Trump gets in, I think it'll become all that much more difficult to pass this thing. But if Trump were to get in, Trump is in, excuse me, if this TPP were not to pass, the populace will see their cause as having improved even more. Trump winning, Hillary losing, and then the TPP going down in flames, the populism will go up another notch and the elite will go down yet another notch.
If TPP were to pass, what could Trump do about it once he becomes president?
That's an excellent question. I don't think it would pass in the current climate. I could be wrong. I don't know. I don't want to act like I know here. That's a tough call. He could
because he's already talking about repealing at least some parts of the Healthcare Act, right?
Yes, that's true. Obamacare, and for good reason. The premiums going up, the deductibles going up, the coverage going down. It's nothing like the Canadian or British healthcare, even though some people get the impression it is. He could simply repeal it, fresh out of the starting gate with the ink not even dry on the TPP yet. It might be hard to repeal it right away. Obamacare has been on the books since 2010, in March of that year. Time will tell. But the main thing is that the article I have on my blog, thetruthhound.com, that you showed there, is that I'm warning people this thing could come out of the background, out from behind the curtain, and they'll try and do it while we're all fixated on all these protests and the apparent purple revolution. So we really can't mention this too much, and we can't stress the caution too much. It's a very, very pivotal time that we're in right now.
Okay, just one last question from me, Mark, and that is what is the sort of feeling on the streets? We only hear, of course, what comes through the mainstream US side, even through the filter of BBC, for example. So, how are people reacting when you gas the car?
Well, funny you should ask that. I went to a McAllen, Texas rally and get together for the election returns on November 8th, going into the wee on November 9th, and talked to and interviewed some local Republicans. The consensus, one strong point in the consensus, is they're glad Trump won, and Hillary lost. That's just as important that Hillary did not get in. But the media, the mainstream media, including overseas, but especially CNN, CBS, ABC, has really showed itself to be an institutional failure, that the Trump campaign, whatever Trump's imperfections, whatever his sins might be, no one's saying he's perfect, but the Trump campaign brought out the underbelly, the dark underbelly of the US mainstream media, and that media's credibility has taken a huge nosedive, and that they agreed with me that it's time for the alternative media to fill a larger role, and they see that eventually happening. And so that was rather a heartening thing to hear. And it was unanimous of the 10, 12 people I talked to that the mainstream media has just really come out and it's been revealed through the dynamics of this divisive campaign to be a real losing proposition, and that it needs to be replaced and needs to see its influence drastically dwindled.
Mark, thank you for that. And you've just reminded me of one last point. I don't know whether you're aware of this or not, but I've seen an article which says that the editor of the New York Times has written a letter to his readers to basically apologize for this, apologizing for writing reports that it was going to be a Clinton landslide. And in the letter, he's saying we didn't do our job and get out and find what was really happening on the ground. Are you aware of that letter? And whether you are or not, what do you think about it?
I'm not aware of that specific letter. I've heard of other instances of the media having to eat some serious humble pie, but I'm not surprised to hear about that letter. My initial reaction is that it's part and parcel of the media itself. It's not just these local Texas Republicans here in South Texas. It's it's a larger picture of the American people and the media itself, the mainstream, realizing it had way overplayed its Hillary hand, and that its credibility has been shown to be extremely strained, extremely diminished. And this is how they're trying to play catch up, much in the same way that Wells Fargo made some extreme banking boo-boos, literally relieving people of their money in a very blatant fashion. And now the Wells Fargo Bank, one of the big banks of the world, especially in the U.S., is going through gyrations of apologies and offering people all sorts of deals. So the banks, as well as the media over here, are playing some serious public relations ploys and trying to win back the credibility that they've seriously lost. But it's well deserved. They entertained this, they brought it upon themselves. So it's time for the alternative media, like ourselves, we're included, to fill an increasing market share, an increasing role.
Yeah, excellent. So we've got some good news coming out of it, and also we're starting to see what this purple revolution is all about. Thank you. Well, if we jump back to what's happening in UK and the EU, excuse me, this has got to be a key headline from the Sunday Express. French officer takes top job in the British Army. He insists he won't lead our boys to war. The excuse for this is apparently to help training of British armed forces who are going to be working in North Africa, where, of course, French is a widely used language. But our comment is Brexit. What Brexit? Here is the movement into the EU military. And if you want another example of it, we've got this one. Bimona Nick Clegg calls for Britain to join the EU army despite UK quitting the crumbling bloc. And this despicable man, of course, has really drifted out of the limelight in UK, working Privy Council. And we should remember that he was one of Leon Britton's European boys. So he's been very pro Mr. Britain, very pro the EU for a long time. But here's that drive for the integrated EU military.
And Jens Stoltenberg today absolutely trying to back that up. He's calling on Trump to get behind European military integration. He said it's too easy to take the freedom, security, and prosperity we enjoy for granted. In these uncertain times, we need strong American leadership, and we need Europeans to shoulder their fair share of the burden. Going it alone is not an option. And so really he absolutely calling on Trump to get behind this joint NATO-EU drive to restructure themselves. And it is increasingly obvious that is the direction that it's going in. Jens Stoltenberg and Federica Mogherini, who's the European foreign minister in sort of, they absolutely spending a lot of time together, giving a lot of presentations together. It's absolutely clear that as this EU military structure develops, that it's being done hand in hand with NATO.
Yep.
So Syria then, I'm not going to make too much comment on this. The Battle of Aleppo has begun. Apparently, deaths reported is the headline from The Independent. Deaths reported as Assad begins final onslaught to recapture city from rebels. So Assad is recapturing the city. There are deaths and it's rebels. So I just want to contrast that with the BBC's coverage of what's going on in Mosul. That Islamic State is hanging the bodies of 40 civilians from poles in Mosul, according to the UN. This is from a few days ago. But it's the difference in rhetoric and approach between these two situations in two cities. We have ISIS embedded, well, if it's the West, NATO-backed troops that are getting them out, then that's okay because we're focusing on what ISIS is doing within these cities. But if it's Assad and Russia dealing with the same problem in another city, then of course it's Assad and Russia doing the killing and not the other way around. So just the hypocrisy in the media is this is one of these things which is going to come back to bite them, I believe.
The BBC in particular, Mike.
And from the Middle East as well, Iran has made a deal with China apparently on defence. They've agreed that today. Expansion of defence military cooperation, according to FARS news agency. Exchange of experience in military fields, speciality training, and all-out campaign against terrorism and insecurity in the region are among the most important contents of the agreement, apparently. So now, Mark, Donald Trump is making some comment in recent weeks about the Iranian nuclear deal. I don't know whether this particular agreement will have much impact on that, but have you any insight into where he's going to go with that?
Not precisely. Leading up to his president-elect status, of course, he has spoken lowly of the Iranian deal, saying that it's a bad deal. That's been pretty much a steady refrain, although at the same time, he has talked about reducing the American military footprint to some degree, especially in terms of not wanting to have a confrontation or have any kind of brinkmanship with Russia, wanting to have warmer relations with Russia. And he alluded to warmer relations with other nations, including Russia, in his New York acceptance speech in the early hours of November 9th. But the Iranian deal, if he's going to try and keep his word, is a bad deal in Trump's view, or at least his stated view. And so it's really a question of whether he'll soften on that or not. So we're going to be looking at that. A lot more will become apparent in the days and weeks ahead on that. But he, of course, has to toe the line with regards to Israel, and supporting the Iranian deal, at least verbally, could simply be a verbal bouquet he's throwing to Benjamin Netanyahu to keep him settled down. So Trump looks hardline enough for the appetite of the Israelis. It could be a tactical thing, but if we're to take Trump at his word, he thinks the Iranian deal is a bad deal. So we'll just have to see how it plays out.
Okay, super. Thank you. Okay, well, tonight on the live stream, ukcolumn.org/live at 7:30 p.m. Ian Crane is back with Humanity versus Insanity. He's going to be looking at the National Health Service and the Department of Work and Pensions and other enablers, as he describes them, pushing the UK government agenda towards euthanasia and in particular. And then at 9 p.m. We have episode 98 of Fracking Nightmare, and he's saying that 2017 is going to be catalytic in determining whether the country gets fracked. And tonight we're going to be discussing Surrey and exploring why Surrey and Lincolnshire are considered as easy targets by the fracking industry. So join us beginning at 7:30 this evening for that. And of course, we'll have the repeat of this news in between those two programs as usual.
Okay, thank you for that, Mike. I'm just going to say, remember that we've got the Winchester Conference on the 19th. So that's this Saturday, British Constitution Group, talking about Britain as a lawless state and the fact that we need to reassert the rule of law. So against the events that we're seeing happening, not only in UK, but worldwide, America, absolutely vital that we get some of these issues into the public arena. So British Constitution Group website here, if you haven't visited it before, perhaps you'd like to do that. tickets for the conference are still available, but it looks like we're going to have a full house, which is absolutely wonderful. And a great deal of information is going to come out from our speakers. Now, just a brief update on the docketies. I'm going to say thank you all very much for your support. We've still got donations for Brian and Janice coming in. We've had a number of events happening over the weekends that have been quite difficult to handle. Just say to people, please remember that at the moment, Brian and Janice are effectively isolated in what is a very hostile environment in Ireland. And we have to go at the speed we can with the communications that we have. And sometimes those communications can be very intermittent. So we're waiting for an update ourselves at the moment. As soon as we get that update, we'll of course pass it on to all of you who've been clearly very concerned about what's happening to this couple. But what I will say as a final comment is that the sheer viciousness and aggression of the harassment that's come against them from both the Scottish state but also in Ireland is clearly another indicator that whatever they touched upon in Scotland, the whole thing, of course, on an approach by what appears to be a paedophile asking if he could buy their son, Brian and Janice do the right thing, and their life literally turned into a nightmare. So we've got to say that based on this, let alone all the other evidence, the respective states in London, Scotland and Ireland terrified of this couple and the fact that they've dared to speak out.
Okay, well, NHS then. So the King's Fund today has, they've carried out an investigation, and some of the media suggesting that that NHS leaders, we'll call them that in inverted commas, are keeping the cuts that are coming from the public. They're trying to hide those. They're saying that health managers in 44 parts of England have been ordered to create strategies for how they're going to reduce costs, change services, and of course they're going to reduce costs and change services, Brian, but they're also going to improve care at the same time. Not quite sure how that works, but £2.45 billion deficit is what they're having to deal with, and so this article here in particular suggesting that GPs have been the least involved in these sweeping plans, as the headline puts it, for NHS change. I'll just say that we've been highlighting that this NHS change has been going on for quite some time. If anybody still hasn't read the Towards a Million Change Agents article on the UK Column website, please do go and dig that one out. The King's Fund were suggesting, in fact, that this wasn't really that it was being held from the public. It's just that they were making the plans, and then they were going to put those plans for public consultation. So of course you don't ask the public in advance in order to help develop the plans. You make the plans first, and then you put them to the public as a done deal. So that's what's going on there. But change within the NHS.
Privatisation. Yeah, yes. The very thing that local South West Devon MP Gary Streeter, Conservative MP, said, there's no such thing as privatisation of the NHS. Anybody who says that the Conservative Party is privatising the NHS is apparently a conspiracy theorist. This is the same MP who says there's no such thing as truth. It's all relative. We were astonished to find that part of our report on Friday, which was a letter from Common Purpose to a member of Shropshire County Council, basically warning them that members of the public were asking questions about Common Purpose finances of the council with regard to Common Purpose, led us on a very interesting trail, because a person got in touch with us and said, do you realise who the Kim Riley was? And I have to say, we didn't, but we certainly do now. This was just the letter. As I say, it came from Common Purpose in Hull. They'd written it to the Chief Executive of Shropshire County Council, Kim Riley, and it was saying that basically members of the public were asking too many questions about finances, and it's a suggestion as to how things could be gently covered up. Well, this is the man concerned. Now, interestingly, his name is spelt in two ways, depending where you go. It's either Riley with an I or with a Y. Here in the Shropshire Star is an article from a couple of years ago saying he's leaving Shropshire, but under a bit of a cloud. Why are we interested in him? Well, this was the chief executive in place when there was still unbelievable bullying and intimidation of Anne Gregg, the mother of Holly Gregg. So we were interested to follow through the trail of this man, and my goodness, we were stunned at where it led us, because he later moved on to the SOLACE group. This is a society of chief executives for local councils. We'll see a bit more of this in a minute. And we then discovered that they had been instrumental in this event, which took place in the last few weeks, Connected Leadership in a Changing World. Good colours there, Mike.
Common purpose, purple and green.
The purple and green. And basically, this also links through to the Institute of Local Government Studies. So that's the University of Birmingham. And when we had a look at that, well, there were two people involved. These are apparently experts in how our local authorities should run, but we can't actually find any expertise in either of these two individuals as to why they can be teaching other people about being experts in local authorities. So here's SOLACE, the Society of Local Authority Chief Executives, and a big part of them is their interface with profit-making businesses, careful matching with relevant senior leaders from complementary or contrasting sectors, roundtable sessions, opportunities for thought leadership. All the language is here. So let's move on through and have a look at some of those partners. Well, we've got a mix and a half here. We've got huge companies like Capita. We've also got Zurich, who are the very people that provide local authorities with insurance. And Zurich, of course, is terrified of the true extent of child abuse coming out because it represents multi-billion-pound claims against those authorities. But at the back of this is the Guardian, and you've mentioned them several times in the last couple of weeks, Mike, because the Guardian promoting the local leadership hub that's also in supporting this lot.
And providing all the IT infrastructure for it as well.
And providing the IT infrastructure. So I'd just like people to think about what we've started with today, the purple revolution, big hedge fund money supporting non-government organizations in America to attack Donald Trump. Here in UK, similar organizations infiltrating the civil service. So let's bring in a person. Here's the president for that event, and he's Mark Rogers, the chief executive of Birmingham City Council, using some remarkable language in this public document. He said he's been communing with his feminine side, and he says he's sad that he'll no longer be speaking as president of the organisation. His words, gobbing off, ? On your behalf. So we're very interested in his language. He says we're still very much the Duracell bunnies of the public sector, bright, energised and here for the long haul. Just remember to look both ways before crossing the road, as we don't want any Watership Down style tragedies. And he goes on to say that it's all about value-based leadership. Well, it certainly is, because amongst the people in that document, and I encourage people to look, we discovered this lady, and she's keen on establishing a common purpose, but she's doing great things for clients and people. And she's a qualified coach and NLP practitioner, a regular speaker at conferences on the area of transformational leadership. So this is not your local authority looking after the roads and feeding the elderly and vulnerable. We're now into Duracell bunnies and transformational leadership. Well, it gets worse. Here's the Zurich insurance man, and it says he's the managing director of the specialist insurer Zurich Municipal. And we say, of course, this is the company which has the risk of all those billions should the truth about the child abuse, the scale of child abuse, break surface. But it says not to worry, because he's a regular commentator on risk issues, impacting on local government and the wider public sector. But this one, I thought, came straight out of cowboy territory because we've got Sanderson Jones, who is apparently not only a comedian, but he's a co-founder of the Sunday Assembly, which is a global movement of secular congregations. So I don't know what the link is with local authorities, Mike, but this man is a comedian and he's a Sunday Assemblist, secular congregation. Well, no, he's a political man, because if you have a look at his website, what is he talking about? Overwhelmingly, he's on the case of that nasty man, Trump, and he clearly wants him out as fast as possible. So, viewers and listeners, you make up your mind as to what this is about, but this man says he's going to fix things with ancient wisdom, and I suggest you have a look at the Sunday assemblies. Here they are. They came out of nowhere. They're now in about 70 countries worldwide and expanding rapidly, as you do. And these are some of the things they believe in, which is to do with the fact that they're inclusive. They want everybody to attend their Sunday assemblies, where they're not going to talk about any spirituality. It's going to be a lot of singing. So there we are, professional community building. And oh dear, actually at the back of it, we've got the European Social Innovation Incubation Network.
What a surprise.
What a surprise. And this one is the really spooky one because the Sunday Assembly website is boasting about a method of measuring how well we are mentally. And this is actually the Warwick Medical School talking about that very procedure. So this is extremely dirty stuff, and it's not only happening in UK, it's of course happening in America. So Mark, I don't know whether you'd like to comment on this at all, but I know that if I research for the same non-government organisations, the same style of charities in America, I come to this same path, of big money being used to effectively subvert what's been the traditional civil service public sector in America.
That's true. I hope I'm coming through clearly. I did detect a couple minor technical glitches here in recent minutes. Yes, you have government by think tank here in the States. You have these NGOs and privately funded, behind the scenes organizations like you're describing that constitute kind of a parallel government. They're put out there to create the appearance of grassroots consent, to create the appearance of public support. But in fact, they supplant and divert and subvert actual grassroots and democracy, actual public input. It's a substitution for the public, if you will. And it's very misleading. And I think that there's less awareness of that here oftentimes than in the UK as to the exact structure of it. Here, it's much more invested in the think tanks, which of course collaborate with the NGOs and the civil service organizations to create this false appearance of grassroots support and public participation.
Yeah. Just a last comment, we're on the stops for time, but if people would like to research these areas for themselves, one of the key, I think, telling indicators is if you come to one of these very smart websites, you think, I'll speak to somebody, and what you actually find is there's a wall, because you can only make communication with them via email. That is always a good sign that you're looking at something from the other side. I think that's about it. Yeah. Mike?
Yes.
Okay. Well, as you see, we have made an effort with our Purple Revolution gear here. So, Mike, just reassure you, UK column's not going to jump on board too strongly, maybe the odd shirt or two. Thank you very much for joining us, and we will be back at the same time tomorrow. Bye-bye. Bye.